I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody, welcome to West Point, Mississippi. This is going to be a good one. I'm looking at Toxie. I've made it on time. That's one of the first times.
Toxie time, I'm 1 minute early. 5 minutes late is kind of normal for me, so I looked at Bobby. I was 4 minutes late.
You made
1 minute
sure
early.
I noticed that you were early for the first time, so that's good. So, well, Lanny is out of town. He's accepting a major award that we won for designing a bag of potato chips for the Uncle Ray's company. So, major award there for designing this bag of potato chips.
It actually got awarded the ones we all love, the all-dressed Mossy Oak chips, won second place in the whole country of new snacks by the whatever the snack organization is. It's pretty cool.
They really are good.
Oh, they're so good. They're addictive, actually.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like vinegar and salt with a kick.
Yeah, but it's different. It has a different flavor.
Yeah, I love it.
I guess that's part of it. Is there's not enough. I'm a chip person. I mean, I'm the kind of I gave up chips for Lent twice. That's how addicted to potato chips I am.
So, Bill Gibson's sitting in where Lanny was. And I asked Mr. Bill to be here because he's got such a perspective. I mean, he can remember
On potato chips?
He can remember when there were no deer. Okay, look. So let me spin around here. We're looking up through the magic of the internet. We've got a lady named Erika Howsare, and Erika, we're so happy to have you. Let me just go ahead. We hit the horns for you, and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really happy to join you.
Well, she wrote a book that I found this past winter, and it's called The Age of Deer. And at first, I thought it might have been how to age a deer, because that's something that we're all interested in. But
I don't
no,
know if it would have taken that many pages.
It's way different. It's a really interesting read, and her perspective on we love the deer so much, and I'm speaking of whitetail deer. We love them all, but the whitetail especially. Mm-hmm. She's got a really unique perspective and story about how wrapped up all of our lives are without even realizing it with our friends the deer. Mm-hmm. So, Miss Erika, I was just thrilled when you accepted my request that if you would come on the podcast and talk to us about this book. But could you please kind of tell how this idea came to you, and then the story of how this book sort of evolved?
Sure. Well, I hope you have a while, because it's kind of it wasn't a very simple idea. The most I can boil it down is to say that I realized that deer, the relationship that humans have with deer would be, if I could dive into that pretty deep and look at all the different aspects of that would be a really good way to think about how we relate to the natural world in general.
Oh,
okay.
Yes.
So, I had, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but I'm not a hunter. I did not grow up hunting. I grew up kind of adjacent to hunting culture. I was around it. There were people in my family who were hunters, and a lot of people that I went to school with and so forth. But it was always kind of distant from me. But it definitely made an impression on me. So that was always in the back of my mind from, childhood. And then as an adult, I just, and I became a writer. I got an MFA in writing, and I became really, really interested in these questions about kind of how we relate to the earth and how humans fit in on the earth. And, so environmental questions and deep questions about our connections to animals and seasons and so forth. And I moved in 2007 to the place where I live now, which is in rural Virginia. And after living here for a while, I just started to realize that deer were everywhere around me. They live in the forest around our house. They were trying to come into my garden and, eat my veggies. I would see them on the road, either alive or having been hit and lying on the side of the road. We've all seen that so many times. Um, and we would take a walk and find some antlers or find some bones. The parts of deer were just kind of around in our environment. And I just kind of realized at some point, wow, this is really, our relationship to deer is really unique because it includes all these different things. Some of them are kind of in conflict with each other, they contradict each other. That's interesting to me. And they're the only animal that's as large as they are, that's, in the eastern US, I'm saying the only large animal that most people see on a regular basis. And that just makes them really unique. And we know that, in the eastern US, there used to be at one time wolves and mountain lions and elk and, bison in certain places. And um, the society we live in has driven most of those animals out of the eastern US. But here we are still living with these large deer. And so that makes them just, I think, really important and really kind of, I call them like an emblem of our time, just an animal that receives a lot of attention. And we have a lot of important relationships with deer. And they kind of stand for, to me, they stand for a certain kind of resilience. They're still here after all those other species have gone away. So, yeah, I could go on, and I'm sure we'll get into some of this, but I just really had a hunch that they'd be a good topic for me, and I didn't even realize until I dove into the research kind of how deep some of these things would go. But it was really a really fun and super interesting process to go deeper into it and go like, okay, well, what is this hunting relationship all about? And why do we think of deer as victims that we need to save while we also think of them as pests that are bothering us? What is the history of deer in the United States? And, is it true that deer are overpopulated? All of those questions, every one of them turned out to be just a huge, really interesting rabbit hole. So it took me several years to kind of go down all those different hallways and see what was there.
She makes some really interesting points, and one of them, she kind of hit on it just a little while. She said we feel like we need to rescue them. Mm-hmm. And how many times have you seen a fawn laying in the woods and you want to kiss it, you want to hug it,
absolutely.
you want to take it home? They are so cute.
But just, yeah, the very people, like me, that hunt and kill and eat deer are the same very people that if they found a deer trapped in a fence would rescue it.
Or
if you came up on two bucks with their antlers stuck together, you would risk your life to go try to separate them.
Yes, you would.
And that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, there's a paradox. If you get something as large as hunters, and whatever 15, 18 million people or whatever there are, you're going to have all types, so you can't just cast a big blanket over everybody. But by and large, I think one of the really remarkable things she's hitting on is the most of us, and I can certainly speak for myself at least, and I can speak for the rest of it because I know y'all so well, is that paradox because we would be the sincere sense of loss to see a fawn die or get hit. I can't even put into words how I would just like my dog or something. It kills me because we love them so much, yet you have this process that we manage, and we do go out and hunt them in a form. And I just think it gives us a greater responsibility in today's age than ever to honor that life if we take that. It is part of the process making them all healthier, Because one thing I will say in defense of hunting all the time is like, so what's the alternative? They're going to die from starvation or a disease or just rot on the side of a road or whatever. But, we're going to take them home and eat that meat and provide for our family probably the highest quality protein there is on earth. There's just that honorable process we have to always be steeped in first before we even go down the road of getting one mounted or anything else that goes with it. And so, so refreshing to see her come from because one of the notes I just made was where it breaks down, and I think she'll agree with me, but if not, it's be a good conversation. When you start with a personal agenda instead of the truth. And I mean, there's nothing more truth than nature and science and what's going on out there. So if you start with an agenda, I hate these dumb redneck hunters, you're going to find bias that'll lead you to the conclusion of hunting's bad. If you, think all people that want to tell you not to hunt are bad, you'll have an agenda in the opposite. You can read, when she's saying it, you can read about what you want to into the paradox of hunting and deer and the deer populations being all around us and what's going on today. But I just having said that, I know that's wordy, but watch for the personal agenda. That's going to be the poison, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
Get her comments on that. I'd love to get your reflection from a different perspective.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying. I think you're talking about, listening and
Yes.
being open to each other. And I'm 100% with you on that. I think there are, a lot of people have emotions run hot, around
gosh.
deer and around hunting, and also around, I write in the book about culling, which is something that a lot of communities end up doing if they feel they have too many deer, especially in a town or a suburb, and all these things can be really emotional and really polarized. And I definitely found for myself personally that, to go hunting, especially because it was with my family members, was really a chance to just practice listening and being open and kind of learning, from what I was experiencing there. And I don't think I would have been doing anybody a service if I had gone in with an agenda, like you're saying. My agenda was just to observe. And I learned so much by doing that.
And your background in journalism and poetry, you can see that in your work here. And then one time I don't know if I was reading the book or listening to a podcast, but I believe you had mentioned something about, and this seems universal, when you just are standing around or walking in the neighborhood and you look up and you see a deer, it seems to have the same effect on everybody. It's almost like you're staring into a fire or something. It's almost like a mystical effect.
A little bit fascinating. Yeah.
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 And we all have that. And I find that so interesting, whether we hunt or not.
I bet that goes back hundreds or thousands of years that has the same effect on everybody that sees them.
Mm-hmm. It does. And then you were talking about, just how people used to use, and still do, but wear deer skins. So we're wearing their skin on our skin. Humans have had a relationship with deer for so long.
Yeah, I really loved thinking about that and all the different ways that has kind of played out. And I think, Toxie, you were talking about the paradox of, and several of you were talking about the paradox of, loving them and killing them. And I think that is a really, really old situation. That goes back, I think, a long, long way for people, because deer have been such important providers for us that have, helped our species survive. They've given us so much meat. They've given us their large skins, which are so useful, and all these other body parts, right? We've made tools from the bones, and people have come up with all kinds of ways to use the organs and the sinew and the hooves and every single part, the hair, there are uses for all of these things, even the urine and the scat, according to a list that I saw, which I thought was just amazing. And so when you have that, one animal that can provide you with so many important things that help you stay alive and, raise your family and protect yourself, I think it kind of follows from that you're going to have this deep, profound love for that animal. And yet, in order to access all those resources, you have to kill. So there is something very paradoxical about that. And I think that's part of the fascination that we still have for them, even those of us who are not hunters in this day and age. I think we still connect with that interest,
For sure.
That paradox is so critical to this whole our relationship with the earth, especially with the deer. And when you talk, it's a lot easier to listen and see things. But when you have that paradox, it's actually the healthy relationship. If you don't have that paradox, whether it is you're just the most awful person ever because you killed this precious animal. That love for the animal ceases to be constructive whatsoever when someone approaches it like that. Or if somebody's like, how dare you tell me the rights, I got the right to hunt, I can do what I want, I can kill them. That doesn't have that paradox. They just, that's just someone just killing for the sake of killing. And I'm sorry I'm not trying to be judgmental, but that's just sad. And I wish for and pray for people like that to have that love in their heart for them, because the reason we get this privilege that we love as hunters is because we take care of them. Absolutely, and only the reason we do is because we take care of them. Now, she's right. They are, as far as I can think of, the most resilient wild game species that's ever existed. It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of my professors said that deer, not that they were popular, but they were important.
Oh yeah.
And that was a common word I heard from my teachers, and it makes a lot of sense.
So it's just the centrist of what she's talking about is so important for everybody, whether you're kind of anti-hunter or whether you're like so far to this side, hunt, shoot and everything. It's so important to bring people together over that love and care of them. And I just think it's so cool that you brought this to bear for us, Bobby, from someone who has such an objective view.
See these people? When the clock strikes 5, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. They have to do these things. They have to do those things. Enter the all-new LS Tractor MT2 and MT2E, a relentless force of innovation. Redesigned with a new hood and cab built for comfort and visibility, with enhanced lifting capacity to get the job done. Making these people the ones everyone else calls those people. Visit your local LS Tractor dealer today.
Moultrie was first in feeders since 1979 and is the leader in total game management. They're taking feeding to another level with the new Ranch Series line of durable and versatile feeders, perfect for both wildlife and domestic livestock. So Dudley, you can feed your goats. Whether you're a deer hunter, a hobby farmer, a land manager, or a rancher, Moultrie has you covered with several kit options, including a rotating auger, broadcast, or a gravity kit. And these feeders are 300 or 450 pounds. They're big feeders. All right, so guys, Moultrie is offering our listeners a 15% site-wide discount at moultriefeeders.com. Use code Mossy Oak with a capital M, Mossy Oak, at moultriefeeders.com and get that 15% discount. So, Erika, Bill's sitting over here. He's been real quiet. He's got a lot to add, though, but he can remember back. He's a pretty old fellow now. He can remember back when there weren't any deer around here, or very few. And I find that very interesting because Toxic, like, think about your grandkids.
My great uncle was Mr. Jack Cottrell. You may have remembered him, but he had the property. His daughter was Nina Clark, and so y'all know where the Clark place is out here north of town. And he just had fox hunters, and they squirrel hunted some, like to fish. But I can still remember as a kid in the '60s, little kid, say mid '60s, when and Daddy was telling me how a group of men from West Point drove out to the farm in amazement because he found a deer track. And they all drove like 15 minutes out in the country, waded in through pasture and looked at the spot where he found a deer track. Now, where have we come since then?
That was quite a deal back then to see a deer track.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And we just didn't have that many deer.
No.
You know, when it started, the population really started to boom was when soybeans came into the bottomlands around here. And we went from not seeing tracks to seeing tracks everywhere.
Yeah, every day I see them at my house every day.
Well, we've learned that the various states have played vital roles in capturing and transporting and releasing them in places protected, just like the wild turkey that we've talked about so much. So there's been a lot of that's gone on.
Yeah, there's a lot of good information in the book on the history of all that and moving deer around and you can hunt them, but you just can't overhunt them. It's funny how they can just thrive in these edge type environments that a lot of other animals can't. But they're really good at that. You know, like on the outskirts of Atlanta, you hear of people, having a lot of deer up around D.C. and places like that. They're eating everybody's hydrangeas and.
Yeah, mine too.
But their habitat isn't the greatest. But once they do eat all those bushes, and succession takes over, and it becomes this huge forest with no food on the ground, then it becomes a problem.
Yep.
But it's just interesting how us humans are also creatures of the edge. We tend to start out in a central location and keep moving out to that edge, but that's also where the deer seem to be too. Right, Erika?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the, kind of first things that I learned about them was that, I think we have a lot of images in our culture of deer in the deep woods. There's, I think I give this example in the book, but there's a type of beer that we buy in my house that has, it's called 8-Point IPA, and it's got a picture on the package of, big, beautiful buck with large antlers, and he's standing in this kind of cathedral type forest with the tall straight trees and the sunlight coming down, and it's just beautiful. And that's the image that we have of deer, but the reality ecologically is not that. It's they're much happier, they could thrive, they could find more food where that forest comes up against the meadow, or if there's been a fire, wildfire, and things are starting to grow back, great place for deer. Or there's been, logging has happened and everything's starting to grow back. All the food is kind of lower down. It's bushy. It's, we've all seen this kind of real bushy.
Early successional habitat.
Yeah.
Boom.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. That's, there's the term. That's where they do the best. And, that also partly explains why they're so good at living in towns and suburbs and cities, because those places are just full of edges. Every time there's the edge of somebody's yard and a few trees, that's an ecotone, that's an edge habitat that they'll do pretty well in. And, power line cuts and even, gas pipeline cuts and things like that create deer habitat.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that about that beautiful buck in the big open woods. We've seen that so many times.
Oh gosh.
And it even goes back, old Europe. You see it on that Stein in Germany. You see paintings on caves with some human with antlers growing out of their head. There's just so many instances of deer and antlers going back so far. I even read where you mentioned that the word wilderness possibly has the word deer in it. Is that right?
Yeah, isn't that cool? So the etymology of that word I learned. So the der part in the middle of that word comes from an Old English word, deor, which is Deor, and that just meant kind of wild animal. So the wilderness is a place of animals, or a wild place of animals. And I just thought that was really interesting and fascinating that, the deer are kind of baked right into that word that we use without thinking about it very much.
So, Erica, another thing I wanted to ask you about was that I'm looking at toxic. Did you know that deer can get COVID?
I had read that. You sent an article. I think Penn State released some research about that back during or just past COVID. Yeah.
Yeah. So she had some information in her book about deer. Erica, how do you think they got it from us?
Well, I think there's a couple different theories about it that I've seen. One theory, it's kind of gross, but it's that COVID is found in sewage. So if there was water that was contaminated with human waste, then deer drinking that water could pick up the virus that way. And then I think the other main idea that people have put out about how this happens is just kind of the way humans pass it to each other. So people likely hunters, because hunters are the ones that kind of get closest to deer, the same way people pass it to each other. But I don't think that's really known. I think that the significant thing is the fact that deer don't really experience a lot of symptoms with COVID, but they can harbor the virus and it can mutate within them, just like it does within people. So they basically are now a big reservoir for that virus to continue evolving, which is not great news, in terms of the hope of trying to, which I think we've given up on by this point, but the hope of trying to wipe out COVID is gone. But, deer are another place where the virus can keep evolving into new forms that we know can, every time there's a new form of COVID, it could be a kind of a new set of challenges.
Yeah, I would think if it was deer, it'd have to be a bunch of different wildlife that it could.
Yeah.
But I haven't, I remember the one article was for it. And I think that article, again, theorized that the workers in like a deer lab could have given it to them, then it spread to other deer. And one thing it did note that it spread very rapidly through deer herds, and they didn't get as sick, like she mentioned.
I remember reading about it in the Midwest. They had tested and found some out there. I just found that pretty interesting. So she left no stone unturned in explaining our relationship with deer. So Dudley, I know you've got a bunch of questions written down there. Come on, let's ask her something.
What do you think, and I'm not talking about just us in modern times, but what do you think it is about, why humans, why we tend to lust over antlers in general? Where do you think that came from and why it still exists?
So kind of in the deeper history you're asking about? Yeah. Well, I mean, antlers are just cool, right? They're just, I have kind of fallen in love with antlers in this process of writing the book too. The more you kind of think about them, the more interesting and amazing they are. They're so unique in the animal world in the fact that they grow and are shed every year. So that makes them this just really wonderful symbol of life force and regeneration. I think I say in the book, it almost makes deer like trees, because trees, drop their leaves every year and regrow. And we all know that that's just an awe-inspiring process to watch the trees make these leaves every year that they're going to shed a few months later. I mean, it never, never gets old to me to witness that. And it's the same thing with antlers. It's a little harder to watch that process, but it's happening. And, antlers are bones. It's kind of really unique to have bones on the outside of the body. And, I think a lot of cultures have seen that process and they've felt that kind of awe for the power of regeneration. And so they've made antlers into a symbol of vitality and life force, and they've been used medicinally in different cultures as a, if you ingest ground up antlers, it's thought that that will give you some of the vitality that that deer has, and being able to grow. Antlers are the fastest growing tissue in the animal kingdom.
That's what I was going to mention.
That's
There's
just
got to be something subconsciously to that.
Yeah.
When something appear, like you said, from nothing. What did Dr. Woods told us that time? Imagine having to cut both your legs off at the knees and grow them back every year. That's the kind of,
effort.
Yeah.
Regeneration that you have to incur. And he was talking about the kind of nutrition you got to have, the extra phosphorus and calcium and all that kind of stuff. But it's just, think about how much, and especially, good gosh, look at a moose or an elk or something, that has to grow something really gigantic back every year. It's crazy.
The Furminator is the industry's most versatile piece of food plot equipment, allowing plotters to do every step of the process, working the soil, adding seed and soil supplements, and compacting, from start to finish with a single implement. It's hassle-free by design. Set it for the seed size and simply drive the tractor, and the Furminator does the rest. Check it out at thefurminator.com.
Hey, this is Toxie Hayes with Mossy Oak. Hunting and fishing, gamekeeping, and taking care of the land with my family is my life. And I'll be honest with you, the one app that I'm on every day and use more than anything is OnX. It literally has changed my life. From property ownership to roads, everything to do with understanding the land better. I even use it to plot acreages all the time. Every function I could dream of. Use coupon code Mossy Oak to save 20% on your next OnX subscription. Trust me, you'll be so glad you did.
I thought it was interesting how, you've been interviewing all these biologists and everybody that knows something about deer. And one thing I've learned being in this field, that a lot of scientists and biologists don't always agree on things, which you would think when you prove something via the scientific method that you would be forced to agree, but that's not always the case. There's different biases and things that exist. And one person you interviewed, we've always had this approach in our minds that, if deer get overpopulated, they eat all of the tree regeneration. I'm a big tree nerd, so I've always been thinking about that. We used to use a lot more fire on the landscape than we do now, although we're trying to bring that back. Smokey the Bear set us back on that a long time ago. But
Absolutely.
This one scientist has this belief that maybe since the fire is gone and these disturbances, what if we had a higher population of deer that ate all of that tree regeneration, and it could actually bring back the ecosystem that we had 500 years ago, where it was more sparse, large trees like a savanna with grasses and wildflowers and barely any mid-story. And I'm sure a lot of people would just really disagree with that, but it's an interesting concept.
It's very interesting, and I'm glad that I'm not in charge of deciding, which is correct. I'm just here to report and listen. But I found that such an interesting idea, because it raised these questions about what we think the habitat is supposed to look like. And it kind of points out that we carry some assumptions about that we might not even, her name is Bryce Hanbury, if people want to look up her work. She's published a lot in, peer-reviewed journals. So she's a very qualified scientist. She points out that most people in the field, when they're being trained, they're trained on these images of a very dense forest, and they kind of come up thinking, this is what it's supposed to be like. So if you've got deer that are eating everything below 6 or 8 feet, then that is a problem that you need to solve. And she just questions that. And she says, maybe it's supposed to be a lot more open. And she believes that historically it was more open. And so she sees, high deer populations as, instead of a problem, she says, what if it's a restoration process where they're restoring these open forests. And, again, I don't know if she's right or not, but and this was something I never expected to find researching deer, but I ended up, going down that path and thinking, wow, I never questioned before how a forest should look. What's a natural forest look like? And I just think those kinds of questions are just so fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just that taught me to, reminded me to keep an open mind and think about those things.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be so quick to assume.
My bias or my agenda, whatever I'm guilty is that I just want to listen to that with open mind. The one thing I can't stand to see that they would suffer, that the population would get so big that they would suffer and be so malnourished to eat to that degree. So that's where that kind of hit me. I can see exactly what you're talking about and the benefits of it, but I think still we should have a helping hand, and we can help a lot. Like she got called out already, let's be smart about it, but timber harvest. What's my old saying I told y'all a long time ago? The old guys, when I was little, was talking about a chainsaw, nothing but a dinner bell to a deer. Mm-hmm. And so, I think we got to meet in the middle, no matter what. And help them.
Erika in the book talks about there's some communities, I believe they were in South Carolina, Erika, where they're just small deer living all through neighborhoods, and people deal with deer daily, grazing in their yards and on their bushes. Mm-hmm. Was that South? Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was on Fripp Island, South Carolina. So it's on the coast, and I went there because I had heard, I was doing some research on different culling programs and sterilization programs that have been tried with deer. And I came across this case. Fripp Island is a kind of like a resort community. It's a beautiful place, beautiful houses that you can go and stay in, and big, wide beaches. It's lovely. But there is a crazy high deer population there, and they're kind of obviously malnourished when you go there and walk around. And, I was only there for one night, so it was kind of like one evening that I was able to walk around and check it out, and then again the next morning, and then we were on our way. But just in that brief time, I saw dozens and dozens of deer. It was just this weird experience to have a landscape that is so saturated with deer. I think I say in the book I was starting to expect to see them up in the trees, because it just felt like every time I turned around, there they were in big groups, and there's no hunting at all on the island. They did try a fertility control program some years ago, but that was not intended as a permanent fix. It was an experiment, really. So it temporarily reduced the population, but then the program ended and the population came back. So yeah, that was one of the big things that I was thinking about when I was there, was the issue of feeding deer, because that is part of the relationship that people on that island have with them. Is there's a lot of feeding and a lot of like hand feeding, so these close interactions. The deer are sort of almost semi-domesticated because of all that. And I, normally my assumption is, because this is what I've heard from wildlife biologists, don't feed deer. That's not a good idea. There's all kinds of reasons to not do that. But I found when I was there that it was really hard not to, because they were approaching us, and it was almost became this individual interaction, like, hey, I'm hungry right now. I need some food. And if I've got some apples or something, I'm going to share them.
It's human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So, Erika, a moment ago, Dudley asked about antlers. And I can clearly remember being a young Bobby Coles laying in the floor watching, and I'll blame Walt Disney. When I saw Bambi's dad, the prince of the forest, when I saw him walk out, I knew right then and there I wanted to shoot him. I just did. I've got that image in my mind right now. Mr. Bill, do you remember that?
For a long time, I thought a lot about shooting deer with big antlers. Now I just soon shoot me a doe for the meat, and I let bucks walk every day, and I take a doe over a buck any day. And I think it's a product of my age more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. I expect that movie probably has impacted more people the other direction than it did with mine. Is that what you found, Erika? You're nodding your head there.
I have heard from so many people since this book came out, and I've been, talking and doing some readings and stuff. And Bambi is one of the things that comes up the most often. And the story that I hear very often is my mom took me to see the movie when I was a little kid, and I was traumatized by it. I felt so sad and upset. And this is, this is kind of what it is with that film. This film is, 80 years old at this point, and it is still a huge influence on American culture today. And I think that there is something about the fact that people see it when they're little that makes it very formative to them. And that scene of, a little baby losing his mother, that is some. So there was a list that Time magazine made at some point of, top 25 or whatever it was, horror movies of all time. And they put Bambi on the list because of that scene.
Oh my gosh.
And it really did. It had a very lasting effect on the way non-hunters think about hunting. And, even at the time, the hunting community, as soon as the film came out, they said, whoa, this is bad news for us, really bad PR. And they were right, because I think generations of people now have been influenced to think of hunting as evil, and kind of, the movie doesn't show hunters as people, really. You never see their faces. They're kind of far away. All they do is they kill Bambi's mother and they start a forest fire. So, and they injure Bambi later in the film. So, there's not a lot of nuance in that, so I think it's very much still with us. And you can see that in the fact that if there's a news story about deer, like let's say a deer gets stuck on a fence, as you guys were talking about, or gets in some predicament where people rescue it, that news story is probably going to use the word Bambi in the headline or in the story, but somewhere, so we're still thinking of all deer as that one deer who is a baby and an orphan and, a victim.
Rather
and fictitious on top of that.
Yeah, rather an entire population of deer. You think of one Bambi instead of an entire population of deer, and you think of that hunter setting a fire as being a bad guy, when in reality that fire can greatly improve the population of deer.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so,
I never thought of that, but yeah, the effect of that movie on how we think about fire too is pretty deep.
You see the same basic thing in the dog world. My wife especially, bless her, she suffered from what I call the Disney syndrome. They're just little humans with fur. And that all this is an outgrowth of all of that probably, but that's the way she looked at it. And, if I got on to a pup, she'd get kind of ill with me. And I said, they're not human. They have different needs, different wants, different expectations. Everything in the dog world is different. They want a leader.
They do want a leader.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
And I think that's an outgrowth of the same thing, really, and goes back to about the same thing, just misconception.
It's born out of a good thing. It's love for the animals.
Yeah.
But then, again, it takes the wrong turn when it is unobjective and isn't, I made the note for later, but it's like, I've said it once before, maybe on a podcast, but one of my dad's saying said, if we could just get a pint of her blood and give it to everybody, we probably wouldn't have such issues in the world today. But when she said, open mind, listen to each other, be objective, park your bias on the sideline, it's so hard to do. Almost everybody in this conversation that we're having would not be that way. But, the stuff that drives this behavior has been fantasy and not reality.
Yeah.
Good point.
So, Erika, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but could you kind of talk us through your journey in writing this book and how it felt like in the very beginning you were kind of ambivalent about hunting. And I felt like at the end, you kind of felt like you might want to participate in this hunting culture, or at least you understood it. And could you talk about that journey a little bit?
Yeah, it was a journey for sure. And I just am so grateful that I happen to have family members who are hunters and were willing to let me come with them, because I think this would have been really hard for me to do, without that family connection. But my brother, Ian Howsare, has been hunting since he was a teenager. He was taught by one of our uncles and a cousin who's a couple years older than me, and who are from Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. So it's become a real family event every year, the first day of rifle season in Pennsylvania. Ian and that uncle and cousin and a couple other cousins, and then there's a couple friends and neighbors involved too, but they all get together at my uncle's house, and they do deer drives together. And this is kind of right on the edge of town. So back to the, kind of wilderness versus ecotone question that we were talking about before, this is not wilderness hunting. This is like right behind a Walmart. There's a big road that goes through. We're hunting down in a ravine that's, just below the main road into town. And so you're walking through people's cornfields and behind houses. And, so it's very much a place that where the human world and the world that the deer live in are just kind of right on top of each other, which was really interesting. But anyway, I was ambivalent, and in some ways I still am, to be honest, but it was such a cool experience to just kind of step into that world. First I went just with my brother bow hunting. So that was a really cool thing for him and I to get to spend the day sitting in a tree stand together and just talking and waiting for deer to come by. He didn't get a deer that day, but it was still just an awesome experience. And I was saying to him, and I said in the book, I've always kind of fantasized about just sitting in the forest for a whole day, but I've never made the time to do it. And I never was sure that I'd be able to do it. Like, could I have the patience, to sit there that long? But when we were there for hunting, that gave me a reason to do it. And there was so much to see and experience and smell and hear. And so I loved that part of it, very meditative. And then going with the big group in Punxsutawney, I think one of the big things that struck me there was just that, here's my family, and they're doing this very ancient thing, really. They're cooperating in order to bring home meat. And there's just something really profound about that, and not to mention it's meat that's super local and it's wild and it raised itself, and there's not a, animal feedlot involved, and there's no, what's the word, antibiotics or hormones involved in this meat being raised. It just raised itself.
Yeah.
And
had a great life.
From an environmental perspective, that's a pretty amazing thing. That's a great thing. So, and I realized I went hunting with them first in 2021. That's the year that I was, most involved in working on the book. By the time the hunting season of 2022 came around, I had turned in the book and I wasn't really researching anymore. But I went back for that opening day of rifle season again, just because I wanted to experience it again. I just wanted to be around them and watch what they do. I wasn't hunting myself, but I was able to participate because, these deer drives that they do, they just need lots of walkers. So I can do that part. And I felt good about contributing something, to that kind of family tradition. And they also gave me a couple of the hides that they took off the deer at the end of the day, which is something that I've become interested in through the process of working on the book, is tanning the hides. So that's kind of a really cool side benefit for me to come home with a couple of hides.
Hey guys, Dudley from Gamekeepers here. I want to tell you about the all-new Gunner Dog Bowl. It's designed for home and built for travel. It's customizable, leak-resistant, light on weight, solid on durability, and rust-proof. Like other Gunner products, they're made in Nashville and designed for everywhere.
This is Lanny at the Gamekeepers of Mossy Oak. I've been shooting Nosler bullets as long as I've been wearing Mossy Oak. Nosler ballistic tip ammunition is made for knocking deer down right where they stand. Nosler's famous ballistic tip bullet is the key. It has controlled expansion and bone-crushing punch to turn a whitetail's lights out. Bring home more deer this year with ballistic tip ammunition from Nosler. Buy now at nosler.com.
There was a time in the book where you live on some acreage somewhere, and a neighbor, a bow hunter, shot a deer that ended up dying on the backside of your property. Came and asked permission and to go look, and you said yes, but I want to go with you. Can you kind of tell that story? To me, that story really put an exclamation point on your journey. The end of that story, and I'm so thankful for the guy's attitude. I don't think. From what I gathered, I don't think he really knew who you were or what you were up to behind the scenes, and the effect he could have had on you one way or another.
I know. Well, I've been saying, I think that guy was sent to me by the gods of book writing or something, because it was just too perfect. But yeah, here I was, 2021. Again, that's my big year of researching this book, and I'm sitting in my house working, and this guy shows up and knocks on my door, and he's wearing camouflage, and he says, I was bow hunting down the road last night, and I hit a buck, but he ran off, and I think he's on your land, and can I please walk around on your property and look for him? And of course I said yes. I've said yes to that before, even before I was doing this book project, but this time I said, yep, but I'm coming with you, and I'm bringing my notebook. And I did tell him that I was writing a book, and he said, oh, really? I want to write a book about deer. So I could tell he was, like you guys have described, kind of in love with deer, and really has thought about it a lot and has a lot to say in his own right. But anyway, we started walking around, and within a few minutes, he had two friends with him. One of his friends spotted the blood trail, so we followed it, and it was amazing. As soon as that blood was found, how his demeanor completely changed. He had been like chatting with me, very friendly, kind of focused on our conversation. But as soon as somebody said, hey, there's blood over here, he just became 100% focused on following that trail. And I couldn't even keep up with him. And, he was running, and he was, kind of shaking and, just so excited. And we found the deer. It was a big, beautiful buck. And he really did have this, the word paradox keeps coming up here today, but he had that very paradoxical reaction of saying to the deer, thank you, I'm sorry. Thank you, I'm sorry. And he kept kind of going back and forth between those two things. And it just was this amazing expression of, he loves this animal and he killed this animal, and it's all there together. And he was very, very emotional about it. And there was just a lot of love and respect there. And also, we talked about the suffering of the deer. He had hit the deer in the liver instead of the heart or lungs. He wasn't happy with the shot. And, we talked about how there is suffering for the animal involved in dying that way. And I just found it, just an amazing experience. And I found myself kind of drawn to that spot after he left and took the deer away. I went back to the spot and just thought, okay, this is where a big animal died. This large being ended its life right here. And it just all felt really significant. I've never had an experience like that. And so the fact that it just came to me, it literally showed up at my door in the middle of writing the book was pretty amazing.
Wow, that is amazing.
Let me tell you. So
Something about that spot,
when I read this, so her words, she go, and I'm just telling you how it came to me though. But she had a couple of sentences there when all that was over with. She said, "This is the spot where the night before two beings converged, and one went into the darkness or that night injured and dying. The other went home anguished and worried and upset and disappointed. And then that they came back together that next morning, and that hunter found that deer and made everything right." But I was just the way she wrote that.
But it's exactly what goes down millions of times, and we just miss the forest for the trees, not the pun intended.
We do.
By not slowing down just a little bit. I made a note listening to you again that I think one thing, a lot of lessons learned for hunters in general, I think, from something like this. And kudos to you, Bobby, for having the vision to see this. Obviously, number one, for you to have the vision to write the book. But one thing we can do, I think, as hunters is hold, I don't think this would be controversial. It sure shouldn't be. All try to strive to hold that deer's life and like every grain of meat from that deer too in the same or more reverence than we hold the antlers. Mm-hmm. Everybody, I don't care who you are, some people are steeped in their own ego. I'm this great trophy hunter. Yeah. My deer scored this or whatever. And, that can all be fine until the point where we hold that in higher reverence than the deer's life itself. And to me, that's the tipping point that she can teach us, is when you hold that life in as much or more reverence, then all kind of good things happen through the management of, the pursuit of, the enjoyment of. If we let that break down, it's our own fault as hunters that we get stuff taken away from us or whatever bad things happen. Yeah. So that was what I got from listening to her. I've heard that voice before, but I really heard it today.
Yeah. She talks about trophy hunters and not very. She doesn't have a real good taste in her mouth for trophy hunters.
But I'm saying that all that's fine if the other comes first.
You make a great point.
That's what we have to do.
Erika, can you speak to that a little bit from what your journey and what you learned?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things I learned was how big the hunting world is and how many, and you were alluding to this earlier, but how, there's so many people who are hunters. So of course there's going to be a lot of different personality types, motivations, approaches, methods. It's not one thing, it's many things. And so, I really tried to observe different ways and talk to people who have different attitudes about it. I certainly, one of the things I write about in the book is like a hunting and fishing expo that I went to near where I live. And these kinds of events, they happen all over the country, but this just happened to be my local one. And I felt like the tone there was very much on the kind of the domination side. It was definitely geared toward people who want to, as you say, there's an ego aspect to that, the sort of like, if I can take this animal, what does that say about me? So there's just a huge emphasis on antler size above, kind of to the exclusion of almost everything else in the imagery and the products that were being sold and the way, just the way deer were kind of being presented. I don't think I saw a single doe in the building. It was all big bucks, and you can't have deer without does.
That's right.
As a mom, I'm here to say that. So I really, saw that kind of on one end of the spectrum. And then on the other end, I talked to some hunters who were just so incredibly, as you said, they had so much reverence for the whole animal and for the animal's life and for the whole choice that they themselves were making, And so I really came to appreciate how much, just what a big world it is, and the world of hunting, and how many different kinds of people are part of it. And the variety that's there.
And Erika, one thing that's kind of struck me that made me kind of come to realize that actually we're just a small hunters. We're just a small sliver of the population.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And I guess I always knew that, but she does a really good job of pointing that out.
Very small.
And Erika, I want to ask a favor.
Okay.
I want Dudley to get his question together, and the last guys will get one more question each. But would you read a paragraph for me if I call out the page number and tell you?
Yeah, absolutely.
This one paragraph, and you may want to tell a little context about it, but it's on page 246 at the very bottom of the page, where it starts with talking. Just the paragraph, it goes on to the next page. It's just one paragraph, but that one paragraph really spoke to me.
Okay, sure. All right. So I think this comes from that same chapter. Yeah, it does, where I went to the hunting expo, and I was kind of looking at, some hunting media, magazines and stuff, and watching a big buck contest at the hunting expo and so forth. So talking with hunters one at a time, I've often sensed a solidity and groundedness that feels deep and real. I've thought, here is a person who understands something about life and death. I've experimented with the belief that by entering into such an intimate relationship with an animal, a relationship that transcends the visual to involve all the senses, that incorporates the animal's habits and perceptions into the hunter's own mind, and the animal's flesh, cell by cell, into the hunter's own body, hunters may be able to claim a knowledge of the world that is unique and, in a sober-eyed way, very beautiful.
I'm telling you, that spoke to me.
Yeah.
Me too. But I'm not. I think I remember the quote. She said, "Maybe." That means we have to have that presence to view it that way as hunters.
Yes.
So I guess that's the right word I'd use to describe it. So yeah, she said may. She didn't say, it's absolute. So just so important to learn. And I honestly, if people listen to this, maybe some hunters get confused by us doing this, but the message you take away from the lessons you learn or whatever are your own to, put into your life in your own way, not us preaching or something about it. But for me, it's such a healthy thing to do what she said, and what she practiced was have an open mind and listen and learn, and what a healthy thing for the world right now, beyond even hunting and anti-hunting that collide, just in general.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How much better would this country be with just a little bit of that right now?
So Erika, I was just so thankful that the hunter that you encountered in recovering that deer, that happened the way it did. And I sat and thought about that for a little while, and I thought back on my own hunting through the years, and I know sometimes who all you're with can make you react differently. A lot of times if I'm by myself, I would get down on my knees and I'll rub the animal's fur and I'll talk to him and I'll thank him. I'll go through all that. And I might sit there 15 or 20 minutes and take it all in. But if there's 2 or 3 other folks with me, it just kind of turns into a back slapping, high five, and throw it in the back of the Polaris. And so reading that and what she experienced made me recognize, and I'm hoping I'm communicating this to people that might be listening, that maybe we can slow down and think about it a little bit deeper, because it is something to be thankful
And
for.
develop it in your own way, but have that reverence we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not singling out anybody out there, you know, because like we said, the trophy aspect of what we do is such an allure. It's such a, I guess, instinctive over time that's come to light in modern media and stuff like that. But so that's fine as long as you have the other two.
Yeah.
You know, in my opinion.
Yeah. Dudley, you got another question?
Well, I've got a question that Lanny submitted. He can't be here, but
He would eat this one up, literally.
Yeah.
You know, you may not want to answer this, but I'll give you that option. So, do you think
I'm getting nervous.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you think the overall impact of the hunting community has been a benefit or a detriment to deer populations?
That feels like a big kind of history question that I don't even know if I'm qualified to answer, but it makes me think about, you know, if we go back to the hunting community of, you know, around the turn of the 20th century, when the deer populations were at their lowest and there were whole, you know, entire states that were empty of deer at that point, which is so hard for us to imagine now. But, you know, it was hunter conservationists who embarked on this big grand project of trying to bring them back. And as we know, they were super successful. So it's hard to, you know, it's hard not to be grateful for that, because if that had not happened in that way, although there were some, you know, they made some mistakes, there were some flaws in what they did, but, you know, we easily could be living in a world right now, which, you know, as we've said, there are, you know, people who remember when it wasn't like this, but we could be living in a world right now with, you know, far fewer deer. And I don't think any of us would want that. You know, we would not have wanted them to go extinct, and we would not have wanted them to just be hanging on in these little pockets. You know, I think in my state, there were a few deer in far eastern Virginia where it's kind of very swampy. There were some deer, you know, hanging on in that environment, and maybe a few up in the mountains. But, you know, the fact that there are deer all through Virginia now and all through your state, and, you know, that is something to be grateful for. And I think, you know, there's other things we could get into about, you know, bucks only hunting and how maybe that has outlived its usefulness, but it's still like something that a lot of people prefer, and that doesn't have the best effect on deer populations overall. There's all kinds of, you know, nuances to that question that he asked, but
Right.
That's the first thing that comes to mind, is that, you know, it was the hunting community that restored the deer population after they had been overhunted. So it's, you know, it's both.
I think that's a great answer.
It
so
is.
we kind of messed it up at the beginning, and then we turned things around. But
And, you know, I think the white-tailed deer is responsible for, it's kind of financially paved the way for a lot of other species to be protected and habitat enhanced, because people are spending so much money on the rifle, shotgun scopes, and all the Robertson Pittman money, the hunting license dollars that go in, that all these a lot of non-consumptive species, many benefits from all the efforts to restore the white-tailed deer.
Yeah, and it may be time for that model to change. I think people are starting to look at that and say, you know, this is no longer the best way to fund conservation of all species, but it did do a lot for a long time, and it is still doing a lot.
Mr. Bill, you got anything to add here at the end?
No, I'm very interested.
It has been. I knew she'd be a good guest. I did. I knew it. I could tell. Erika?
Well, he's a co-Arthur along with you, as we call him.
That's what I heard. Yeah, that's very cool.
Yep. He has the great reference for that, and I do too. What a discipline it takes, and my goodness, I can't imagine how hard you worked on this.
How long did it take you?
Well, I started thinking about the idea in 2019, I think, but then it took me a couple of years to find a publisher. And in the nonfiction world, you usually write a proposal, but you don't write the entire book until you found a publisher. So found the publisher in 2021, worked on it really hard for about 18 months. And then it just came out earlier this year. So it is a long process, but I have learned so much. It's just been, one of the best projects I've done, and I feel lucky to have had the chance.
Well, I tell you what, everybody listen, I would encourage you. I think you can go to Amazon or wherever you buy books. It's The Age of Deer, Erika Howsare. And Toxie will know, were you related to Doogie?
That's right. I told you to tell your cousin Doogie hello for me. So I just got to
If
say,
I see him, I will. I don't think he's one of my deer hunting cousins, but
no,
I'll
I'm
keep
guessing
an eye
not.
out.
No, just I have to say how fascinating this is. How just honest and true your approach to all of it was, and it's a complete honor that you shared the journey with us. Thank you very much.
Well, gosh, thank you so much for all the kind words and for inviting me. I'm really, as I said before we got started, this is really the first time that I have been interviewed by a show that's really focused on hunting. So I'm honored to be invited and just really glad to be here. So thank you.
All right, Erika, before we let you go, we always ask you a trivia question. You have a chance to win a prize, but our producer back here he's raising his hand. I think he's got a question. I don't know where this will go, but let's see.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a two-parter for you. So with the research that you've done, you've been around a lot of people from both the non-hunting and the hunting community. So what are some things that the non-hunting community doesn't understand about the hunting community? And then what are some ways that the hunting community can better communicate what it is that we do and how we live?
Okay, these are not trivia questions.
This isn't the trivia.
No, this is, Rob is kind of new to this today.
Trivia question.
As a teacher, he likes
I thought you were going to say,
yeah.
what year did Bambi come out or something like that.
No. So he doesn't like multiple choice. He likes essay, unfortunately.
I hope I didn't confuse you there.
Sorry, trivia question will come. I just wanted to add one question there at the end.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so the first part of that was what do non-hunters get wrong about hunters? Was that it?
Yeah, what don't they understand that maybe we could help them understand?
Yeah, well, I really think it's the stuff we've been talking about all along. It's the fact that, there are hunters that have this deep reverence and love for deer. I think a lot of people miss that. And it's the fact that when you say deer hunter, that's actually not a great label because there are so many kinds of deer hunters and so many ways to do it and so many different reasons for doing it. So I think a lot of people who aren't hunters and have never really talked to somebody about hunting, I think they probably are not aware of how much variety there is in the hunting world. And then remind me the second part of your question.
Yeah, the second part was just how could we better communicate that in what we do, what we write, what we put out?
I don't know. I don't know how to, hopefully what I've written will help in that department. But I think, and I'm not so much thinking of like the podcasting world here, but every time I've picked up like a hunting magazine, in my experience, those have been very, very focused on kind of trophies, and they have that kind of tone of, let's go out and get some big antlers, and that's the end of the story. And so if there are hunters that are good at writing and communicating, and they have other feelings about why they hunt or what's important about it, put that out there. There's I think there's a lot that people aren't aware of that is more gray areas about hunting, and it's seen as a pretty black and white situation.
Points.
Yeah.
Absolutely great points. And I will say, from having been involved in a very long time, I'm going to say the late 90s or so, the trophy preponderance of that being the communication just overwhelmed everything. And I even said at the time, I think we're going to be careful we're eating our own young here. As what kid wants to get into this sport? You can't measure up to that. And so I think we lost our way for a period of time there. I'm just kind of saddened looking back. But I think there's a great balance today, and it's growing in the right direction. I see us specifically, and I'll give some dibs to, Dudley's like that, Lanny's like that, my sons are like that, especially Daniel, but they both are. And others, there's a big, Bambi above all else, my son-in-law, are really pushing and promoting the wild game, all the various recipes. We've got as much emphasis on the pro staff kind of people, more so like famous chefs or wild game chefs and recipes, as much as, somebody who takes big bucks with a bow or whatever. So, that whole piece has become more and more popular, which I think is really, really healthy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, it is. That's good.
Even because for 35 years I've heard Cuz say, and this is a guy that works for us who's become very famous about it. He killed basically a state record deer about 45 years ago, and he said, all my friends saw the big rack on the wall when they saw that 250-pound deer with this huge rack. They saw winning the big buck contest in a new rifle. They saw their face on the cover of the magazine, and I looked at it and I saw hamburger. That was one of his famous sayings back, that long ago. And I honestly, that's one of the healthiest things he could have said.
Yeah, he's always
been that way.
Yeah. Hadn't changed on that.
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay, well, so I'm the odd guy out.
Yeah, you have been, but you've done because of your relationship with her. Now you're going to come around to a more rounded view of white-tailed deer, right, Bob?
Yeah, I always have.
Mr. Trophy.
I like to eat them, but I do like the antlers. So, all right, Rob, let's get on with the trivia.
All right, let's do it.
Today's trivia is brought to you by Sheffield Financial. Explore swift, effortless, and convenient financing for power sports, outdoor power equipment, and trailers, fueling your pursuits in hunting, fishing, and game keeping. More details at sheffieldfinancial.com.
All right, so this trivia we're playing for Tony Willingham, who took a few minutes to leave us a review. His prize is going to be the Biologic BioRock.
Oh, yeah, it's time to put those out.
So here it goes.
No, and so, Miss Erika, if you get this right, you win a podcast T-shirt. And these are coveted T-shirts. People fight
All
for
right.
them.
All right. Fingers crossed.
Okay. So it's certainly been simplified and modified in people's vernacular through the years. But what is the correct spelling of the most abundant deer species in eastern North America?
All right. Well, this is the white-tailed deer. So I think the issue here is it hyphenated or not, right?
That would be correct.
Okay. So, and I actually had some discussion with my editor about this. So if it's, this is what I think. If it's the adjective, so white-tailed deer, then it's going to be WHITE-TAILED, deer.
That is correct.
If it's, all right.
And you can continue, but that you're exactly right, though. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, so what I did in my book then was if I'm just saying whitetail, like a whitetail did this, then no hyphen.
That's right. And it's kind of just become, you see a lot of magazines today that just say whitetails and put it all together.
What's the scientific name, Dudley?
Oidocoilus virginiana.
So what species of oak has the same Virginia? But by the way, for Virginia. It came from there.
That would be Quercus virginiana.
That's right.
The live oak.
Live oaks. That's correct.
Erika,
Okay.
we have really enjoyed having you on here, and I wish you a lot of luck out on your travels selling the book. That's a lot of effort. I know it is, but you've got a great product here.
Y'all go out and get this book.
Absolutely.
It tickled all my senses. It was just interesting. It was thought provoking. I can picture myself with my back to a tree, sitting on the ground, reading this book on an all-day hunt. And I'm probably not going to be hunting too hard. I'm just going to be sitting out there reading this thing.
So are you going to read the book for a book on tape?
I have already done that. So if people want to get it as an audiobook instead, it's out there. It's available, and it is read by me for better or worse.
Yeah, I just was hoping you'd say that because I've had it both ways, and even if they think they're not good, I would prefer that the author read it because I do consume them that way now, my lazy mind and eyesight. So thank you for that. I'm going to consume it that way.
We'll add a link in the show notes so people can find it there.
And Erika, when we get off, if you would send me your brother, I was impressed with him. It sounded like he bought a place to go deer hunting. I mean, he sounded like he's really into it. I'd like to send him we would like to send him a subscription to the Gamekeeper magazine. That's right. I think he would enjoy that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he'll love that. That's really cool.
Sounds like
Thank
he
you
is a gamekeeper.
It does. It was. Yeah, he really was. So, all right. Have you got anything else you need to add or touch base on?
No, just thank you so much for having me, and really enjoyed it. Great to meet all of you.
Well, it's been our pleasure.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Likewise.
Yeah,
absolutely. Congratulations.
It sure has.
All right. Thank you again. Take care.
Stay in touch. Thank you.
I knew it'd be good. I thought y'all would all enjoy the way she
absolutely
communicated her thoughts.
She reminded me of a lot of our best biologist buddies. Very just steeped in like whatever kind of fact and not just opinion or the saddest thing when you have guests that do it. My opinion is truth or fact.
Yeah.
That's just everything breaks down when you get that.
I
She was very void of that. She was very much just like tell it like it is, open minded. She brought that up in the beginning, and then she proved she was like that. Listening to everybody, no matter what, and being open minded.
That's how we all need to be.
Yes,
in my opinion.
Okay, guys, before we close this thing out, there's something that's kind of on my heart. I heard a story, and it really just touched me. And I just want to say there's a young man from over near around Winona. His name is Josie Knaps. He and his buddies were camping out, and there was a bonfire, and somehow a cannon bug spray got in the bonfire and exploded. It's just awful. There's nothing short of awful. And Josie's leg got cut real bad. Josie's got a lot of burns. But boy, I heard how he handled the situation, took charge, handled the situation. This kid has got a lot. He's a brave young man, and he's got a long road to recovery. He's got some burns on him. And I just wanted to mention that to you guys about this story. And Josie, we are thinking about you. Are in our prayers.
I'll tell you what, we're proud of you too.
Very proud.
Keep it up.
Yeah, and let it be an inspiration to all of us and to everyone else out there to be so careful.
Yeah,
in this season of getting outdoors and stuff like that. Josie, from everybody at Mossy Oak, we're thinking about you, and we're looking forward to you getting back on the creek bike fishing and back in the woods this fall.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, accidents can happen. Boy, they happen in a blink of an eye. We all got to be careful. And, But, Josie, we did. Toxie, thank you for what you said. It's a touching story. Josie, we are praying for you. So right here at the end, why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast. And be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.